James had always imagined the moment his wife went into labor would be chaotic, but he never expected community regulations to be part of the chaos. It was just after sunrise when Emily clutched her belly, her face tightening in pain. "It's time," she whispered, and James sprang into action. He grabbed the hospital bag, helped her down the front steps, and pulled their SUV up to the curb directly in front of their house, a red-painted loading zone the HOA insisted remain clear at all times. But in his mind, this wasn't a parking decision, it was survival instinct. His wife was in labor. They needed to go. He was helping Emily ease into the car when he heard the unmistakable click-click-click of a phone camera. He turned and saw Karen, official HOA president, self-appointed ruler of their cul-de-sac, and the last person anyone wanted to deal with before coffee, marching toward them with the fury of a parking enforcement officer on a power trip. "Excuse me," she barked. "You cannot park there. That is a clear violation of HOA regulations, Section 4, Paragraph 12. James blinked at her. "Karen, she's in labor. We're going to the hospital." Karen did not care. Her eyes narrowed as if she had caught him committing a federal crime. "Doesn't matter. Rules exist for a reason. You need to move the vehicle immediately." Emily groaned in pain, gripping the door handle, and James felt his patience snap. "I'm not moving the car. We're leaving." Karen gasped dramatically, as though he'd slapped her. "If you don't comply, I'll have to report this. You know I can't ignore violations just because you're inconvenienced." She said inconvenienced like Emily's contractions were an optional hobby. Before James could respond, Karen was already dialing her phone. "Yes, this is President Karen from Willow Ridge HOA. I need security dispatched to my location. We have a resident refusing to follow parking regulations." "Yes, I'll wait." James stared at her in disbelief. Emily cried out again, this time louder, and he climbed into the driver's seat, shaking with frustration. But as he reached for the ignition, a security vehicle turned onto their street, lights flashing, not because he'd done anything wrong, but because Karen had decided that HOA rules mattered more than a woman in labor. The security vehicle rolled to a stop in front of their driveway, blocking the SUV just as James tried to pull out. A uniformed guard stepped out, adjusting his belt awkwardly, clearly unsure why he'd been summoned with such urgency. Karen marched toward him before James could say a word, waving her phone like it was legal evidence. "There he is," she declared, pointing at James as if identifying a criminal suspect. "He's violating the HOA red zone policy, and he became aggressive when I told him to follow the rules. I need you to issue a citation immediately." James threw open his door, furious. "My wife is in labor. I told you that. We need to leave, right now." The guard blinked, taken aback. His eyes moved to Emily, who was doubled over, her knuckles white from gripping the seat. "Ma'am, are you okay?" "She's in labor," James repeated, each word sharp with desperation. "We're going to the hospital." Karen crossed her arms. "People fake emergencies all the time to get out of HOA fines. I've seen it. You can't just take his word for it." Emily let out a loud cry as another contraction tore through her, and the guard jolted as if he'd been shocked. Ma'am definitely doesn't look like she's faking anything." But Karen refused to budge. "Procedure is procedure. He needs to show his ID and receive a written warning. Then he can leave." James stared at her, stunned. "A warning? Are you insane?" Karen planted herself in front of the SUV like she was guarding a priceless monument. "You are not leaving until this is resolved. If you drive off, it will be considered fleeing security." Emily's breathing grew rapid, 2 seconds in, 2 seconds out. "James," she groaned, "the contractions are 2 minutes apart." That was it. James reached for the gear shift, determined to get his wife to the hospital no matter who stood in the way. But as he rolled forward an inch, Karen stepped closer, slamming her hand against the hood and screaming, "You're endangering me. I will call the police." The guard looked horrified. "Karen, "What are you?" "Ma'am, please step aside." But she wouldn't. She ranted about community rules, neighborhood safety, and people like him, all while Emily struggled to breathe. Only when the guard physically guided her backward did James finally have a path out. They sped away, leaving Karen shouting in the street as the guard tried to calm her. By the time they reached the hospital, Emily was on the verge of passing out, and James was shaking with anger, certain this wasn't the end of it. Emily was rushed into a delivery room the moment they arrived, nurses instantly recognizing the urgency in her labored breaths. James stayed by her side, holding her hand, still rattled by everything that had happened. When Dr. Reyes, Emily's OB-GYN, walked in, she offered a reassuring smile, until she noticed the stress etched across both their faces. "Rough morning?" she asked gently. James let out a breath. "You could say that. Our HOA president blocked us from leaving. She actually called security on us, during labor." Dr. Reyes froze mid-prep. "Your HOA president? What's her name?" "Karen. Karen Monroe." The doctor blinked, processing that. "That Karen?" James didn't understand the weight behind the question until Dr. Reyes sighed heavily, lowering her clipboard. "I had an incident with her last year. She tried to override medical instructions during her own checkup, screamed at the staff, accused a nurse of lying about her blood pressure, and then demanded we rewrite her chart. She became so aggressive security had to escort her out. We reported it to the board, but she just switched clinics for routine visits." James felt his jaw tighten. "Well, today she blocked us from getting here. She stood in front of the car. My wife could have delivered in the driveway because of her." Dr. Reyes looked at Emily, who was breathing deeply through another contraction. She nodded, her expression turning resolute. "I'm documenting everything. This isn't just disrespect, it's obstruction of a medical emergency. There will be consequences." Emily delivered a healthy baby boy 2 hours later. Despite the chaos that had started the morning, the room filled with warmth, relief, and the soft cries of new life. For a moment, everything felt perfect. But Dr. Reyes wasn't done. 3 days later, when James and Emily returned for their newborn's first checkup, the receptionist softly informed Dr. Reyes that Karen had called to schedule an appointment. Dr. Reyes stepped out of her office, picked up the phone, and calmly explained the decision. "Ms. Monroe, due to repeated violations of clinic policy and your obstruction of a patient's medical emergency, you are formally dismissed from this practice. A written termination will be mailed to you along with a list of other clinics." There was shrill yelling on the other end, but Dr. Reyes remained composed. "I'm protecting my staff and my patients," she said simply, and hung up. News spread quickly through the neighborhood. For once, people weren't whispering about James, they were whispering about Karen, the HOA president who had finally crossed too many lines. And for the first time in years, the neighborhood felt just a little quieter.